You cannot carry out fundamental change without a certain amount of madness. In this case, it comes from non-conformity, the courage to turn your back on old formulas, the courage to invent the future. Besides, it took the madmen of yesterday for us to be able to act with extreme clarity today. I want to be one of those madmen. On October 15th, 1987, for his madness, for his commitment to invent a future for the impoverished Burkina Faso, his body was riddled with over a dozen bullets. The revolution was over, and with it, the life of Thomas Sankara, the man who dared to dream of a self-reliant and corruption-free Burkina Faso. His death was not just the end of a life, it marked the tragic fall of one of Africa's most radical leaders, whose vision for justice and equality was brutally cut short. His vision turned one of the poorest nations into a beacon of hope. His policies and unyielding commitment to justice shook the foundations of neo-colonialism and sparked a wave of change. He dared to dream of a free and prosperous nation and paid the ultimate price for his vision. You may be tempted to think this is one of those usual African martyr stories, but I guarantee you that this is not an ordinary story. This is a story of commitment, sacrifice, and friendship. And unfortunately, it is a story of trust and betrayal. This is the tragic story of Thomas Sankara. Welcome to another episode of Afrinometry. Get a cup of coffee and sit tight, because I'm about to tell you a story of how Africa had a Lee Kuan Yew whose life was cut short because of the selfishness of his closest ally. Thomas Isidore Noel Sankara was born on the 21st of December 1949 in a small town called Yoka, part of the French Upper Volta. His father, Joseph Sankara, a French colonial army veteran, was of the Mosi Fulani ethnic group. His mother, Mogarate Kinda, was of Direct Mosi tribe, the largest tribe in the country. He spent his early years in Gao, a town his father was transferred to during his military career. Sankara was the third of 10 children to Joseph and Margarita Sankara. As a child of the few employed individuals by French colonial government, Sankara enjoyed a privileged position. He lived in a brick house in the barracks, housing other soldiers of the colonial army on the hillside overlooking the rest of Gao town. Sankara attended primary school in Bobo Dioulasso, the second largest city in Burkina Faso after Ouagadougou, the country's capital. His parents were devout Christians, and they instilled in him Christian values which he held throughout his life. Sankara was an excellent student. His teachers, many of whom were priests in that era, urged him to go to the seminary after his secondary education, and his parents encouraged him to follow that path too. Thomas initially agreed, but took the exams required to enter the 6th grade in the secular education system and passed. Thus came an end to his journey of becoming a priest. The turning point in Sankara's life came when he decided to pursue secular education at the nearby Lycée, a public secondary school named after the pre-independence nationalist who was in Coulibaly. There, he met close friends who later charted the course of his political life with him. Among those friends are Soumani Touré and Fidèle Eto'o, whom he later named minister in his government. Although his parents wanted him to become a priest, Thomas chose to enter the military instead. At the time, the military was famous because of the coup that ousted Maurice Umego, the first president of the Republic of Upper Volta. Many young intellectuals viewed the army as a national institution that might help discipline the inefficient and corrupt bureaucracy and modernize the country. The Maurice government was corrupt and known for embezzlement and misappropriation of funds. President Maurice spent 6 months outside the country in sumptuous villas and town spas. Meanwhile, his wife flamboyantly showed her stars in expensive fur coats and his children in excessive luxury lifestyle and drove around town in sports cars that were bought with money from I'll leave you to guess where. The excessive lifestyle of President Maurice left the country in debt and majority of the country below the poverty line. So when the 1960s coup happened, a new patriotic spirit was born in Sankara, like it was in many youths of the Republic of Upper Volta. For young Sankara, the best way to serve his country was to join the army, which was the champion of the new nation the youths of his time hoped for. Upon completing his secondary education, Thomas Sankara applied to the newly established military school in Ouagadougou, the country's capital. He was 17 when he was admitted and was among the academy's first intake. The freshly admitted military trainees were taught by civilian professors in social sciences. One of the notable professors is Adama Traoré, who taught the students history and geography. At the time, he was the academic director and was popular among the students for having progressive ideas, although he did not share them publicly. Adama often met with a few of his brighter and more political students to join informal discussions on imperialism, neocolonialism, socialism, communism, Soviet and Chinese revolutions, the African liberation movement, and similar topics. Thomas Sankara was among the few students invited. Although Sankara had already started becoming politically aware, This was the first time he had been formally introduced to the revolutionary perspective on Upper Volta and the world. While in military school, Sankara also developed and pursued a passion for music. He became very skilled in playing the guitar, a skill he later used to write the country's national anthem. After 3 years of training in his home country, he proceeded to Madagascar, where he underwent 3 years intensive military training at the Military Training Academy in Ansaribe. While in Madagascar, he studied agriculture and how to improve the life of farmers through crop cultivation and animal rearing. He used this education during his time in government to boost the country's agriculture and ensure food sufficiency. Sankara read profusely about history and military strategy, and thus he acquired the concept and analytical prowess he would later use to redefine Burkina Faso's political history. Some notable works he read include those of Karl Marx and Vladimir Lenin. These two authors influenced his political views for the rest of his life. Sankara began his military career after finishing basic military training at 19. A year later, he was sent to Madagascar to continue his education as a junior military officer. While in Madagascar, Sankara witnessed a popular uprising against the government of Philbert Tsiranana. Several of his professors at the military academy in Madagascar were left-wing French academics. Sankara sometimes discussed politics and government systems with them over dinner. After his time in Madagascar, Sankara returned to Upper Volta and continued his military service. His experience in Madagascar, where he witnessed popular uprising, likely deepened his understanding of political power and the potential for social change. In 1974, Sankara participated in the border wars between Upper Volta and Mali. His involvement in this conflict, which he later criticized as useless and unjust, further shaped his political consciousness. During this time, he began questioning the established political order and developing a more critical perspective on the military's role in society. By 1976, Sankara was appointed the commander of the Commando Training Center in Po. This position provided him with opportunity to influence the training and ideology of young military officers. During this time, he also met Blaise Compaoré, a fellow officer who would become a close friend and an ally. Their relationship played a significant role in Sankara's political ascent and eventual leadership of Burkina Faso. Blaise Compaoré, Thomas Sankara, and other young officers formed a secret organization known as the ROC, dedicated to promoting progressive political and economic reforms. Sankara's political career gained momentum during Colonel Saye Zerbo's presidency. In 1981, he was appointed Minister of Information, where he promoted significant reforms to promote media freedom and transparency. However, his progressive views clashed with the regime's increasingly conservative policies, leading to his resignation in 1982. After his resignation, he publicly denounced the government and was placed under house arrest. Following another coup in 1982, Sankara was appointed Prime Minister under Major Dr. Jean-Baptiste Odrego. Still, he was dismissed 4 months later because they were always in disagreement about Jean-Baptiste's policies. Sankara's dismissal and subsequent arrest sparked widespread discontent among the younger officers in the military regime. The decision to arrest Sankara proved to be a turning point in his political career. It created the necessary momentum for his friend Blaise Compaoré to lead another coup, which brought Sankara to power in 1983. Sankara's friendship with Blaise Compaoré grew closer and closer. They would often visit Sankara's parents and spend days with them. They were friends whose friendship went beyond patriotism and ideas for national development. They had become a family. In fact, at the time, Sankara's father, Joseph Sankara, would admit that Blaise Compaoré was like a son to him. They were so close that when Sankara became president in 1983, his parents said 2 brothers took power. So, when Thomas Sankara was imprisoned in 1983, his friend Blaise Compaoré came to his rescue. He did that by organizing a coup that ousted the government of Jean-Baptiste and brought Thomas Sankara to power. The coup d'etat, carried out by his friend, was possibly supported by the Libyan government, which was in the middle of a war with Chad, supported by France. Libya was in a border dispute with Chad, and they supported the coup with the hope of mobilizing sympathy and support from the Republic of Upper Volta. Libya would later play a part in the assassination and overthrow of Sankara's government. When he became president, Sankara identified as a revolutionary. He was inspired by Fidel Castro and Che Guevara of Cuba, and Ghana's military leader, J.K. Rawlings. As president, Thomas Sankara supported a democratic and popular revolution. He defined the revolution's ideology as anti-imperialist, and his policies were oriented towards fighting corruption, promoting reforestation, and ensuring food sufficiency for all. On 4 August 1984, the first anniversary of his presidency, he renamed the country from the Republic of Upper Volta to the People's Republic of Burkina Faso, meaning the land of upright people. He also gave it a new flag and wrote a new national anthem. He named the country's leadership the Council of the Revolution and appointed both civilians and military personnel to the council. The council gave advice and direction for the government's action and would sometimes overrule even proposals favored by Thomas Sankara. At just 33 years old, Captain Thomas Sankara had become the youngest president in sub-Saharan Africa. At the time, Burkina Faso was one of the poorest on earth. The country had about 7 million people and a per capita income of just $211. Less than 20% had access to good roads and basic amenities, and the country's literacy rate was only 13%. Only 18% of school-going children were in primary school. If they passed that, only 3% made it to secondary school. Recurrent drought, soil erosion, and poor crop yields always meant that hunger was common among the population. Poor nutrition and disease outbreaks put the country's life expectancy at about 44 years, and the previous administration's misappropriation and embezzlement of funds meant that the government had little or no reserve to fall back on. Although the country's condition was near hopeless, Thomas Sankara made it a duty to give Burkinabe a hope. Top of his agenda was waging the war on poverty, which was critical at the time due to the horrible drought experienced in the country in 1983 and 1984. He championed agrarian reforms, urging the Burkinabe to reduce their dependence on foreign aid by embracing local agriculture. His administration introduced modern farming techniques and distributed agricultural equipment to farmers. He nationalized oil lands and mineral wells and implemented agricultural initiatives driven by the state. These reforms increased food production in the country, safeguarding the nation's food insecurity, and he also initiated a nationwide tree planting campaign to combat deforestation and improve agriculture. Within 15 months, 10 million trees were planted. This marked one of the early tree planting campaigns in West Africa. His government promoted gender equality and banned female genital mutilation, forced marriages and underage marriages, and polygamy. During one of his gender equality promotion campaigns, Sankara told his local audience, "Socially, women are relegated to third place after the men and the children, just like the third world are arbitrarily held back." President Sankara appointed women to prominent cabinet positions and recruited them into the army. His government introduced literacy classes for women, maternity training in rural villages, support for women cooperatives, and market associations that improve women's lives. His stand on feminism and gender equality will often bring him at loggerheads with some of the military comrades because some of them kept mistresses. Thomas Sankara launched a vaccination campaign that vaccinated over 2 million children against polio, meningitis, yellow fever, and measles. He also established health centers nationwide and encouraged all communities to build clinics through volunteer labor. He sometimes volunteered in the building of those community clinics himself. These initiatives significantly lowered the child mortality rate in the country. Thomas Sankara viewed corruption as a cancer eating away the nation's fabric. His anti-corruption drive was both rigorous and personal. He led by example, eschewing the luxury associated with African leaders. He sold off the exotic government Mercedes and mandated that government officials drive the modest Renault 5, the cheapest car sold in Burkina Faso at the time, instead of the luxury cars. He wanted to give one car to 2 ministers, but the ministers explained how difficult that would be to manage. He obliged and gave each minister a car. He forced government officials to fly economy class. He would always lodge in modest accommodations, saying the money saved from the expense suit could be used to provide water for rural Burkinabe. He publicly disclosed his asset, which consisted of a modest list: a car, 4 bicycles, 3 guitars, a fridge, and a broken down freezer. He also maintained his captain's salary of just $450. Sankara endeared himself to the masses by promoting transparency and accountability, although his stand earned him powerful enemies. He replaced lavish state banquets with modest meals of local food, signaling a break from the extravagance of his predecessors. He often called to the exotic military budget, directed the funds towards the public housing project, and usually encouraged military personnel to volunteer in the building project. He banned the use of his portraits in public buildings across the country and discouraged youth from idolizing him. He often rides his bicycle to work and plays sports with his ministers, often publicly without bodyguards. President Thomas Sankara did that to send a clear message to the population that leaders should be modest and prudent, especially in a poor country like Burkina Faso. Sankara's anti-imperialism stand was fueled by his participation in international conferences, most notably the 1983 Non-Aligned Movement Conference in New Delhi. There he met Fidel Castro, Samuel Marshall, Maurice Bishop, and J.K. Rawlings. These leaders provided Sankara with diplomatic allies and friendship that would help Sankara navigate the perils of French neocolonialism. At the conference, Sankara was confronted with the global dynamics of neocolonialism and imperialism that continued to cripple the development of post-colonial states. To Thomas Sankara, even the loans from the World Bank, the IMF, and the other developed countries had other ulterior motives, and that motive was the exploitation of the post-colonial state. He rejected loans from the IMF and also rejected aid from such organizations. Sankara strived for the local economic development hoping to put Burkina Faso on the path to financial liberation. He became famous at AAU's conference for his speeches on anti-imperialism. He often called for unity and denounced neo-colonization and the unjust debt imposed on African nations. Sankara argued that these debts were illegitimate, having been accused by corrupt leaders under colonial regimes, and should not be paid by the impoverished citizens of post-colonial state. He held this position firmly, but there was no way he would defy the payment of those loans alone. In fact, in one of his OAU speeches, he said that if Burkina Faso alone refused to pay the loans, he will not be in the next OAU summit, signaling that the colonial power would have devised a way to strip him of his position as president. Well, they did pull that off, and even worse, they also stripped him of his life. While he gained popularity and acceptance among the poor in Burkina Faso, the elites were unhappy with his reforms. At the same time, he gathered powerful international enemies for his speeches on anti-imperialism. France in particular viewed his policies as a threat to its interests in West Africa. French President François Mitterrand described Sankara as a somewhat troublesome man, saying that with Sankara it is impossible to maintain a calm conscience or sleep peacefully. Some countries, including France and Libya, began to see Thomas Sankara as a dangerous man.
Et dit ce qu'il pense, je le dis aussi. Et je trouve que dans un certain nombre de ses jugements, il a le tranchant d'une belle jeunesse et le mérite d'un chef d'État totalement dévoué à son peuple. Et moi, j'admire ses qualités qui sont grandes, mais il tranche trop aussi. Il va plus loin qu'il ne faut, à mon avis, qui me permettent de lui parler du haut de mon expérience.
This country sought ways to keep him silent, and there was no better way to do that than through his closest friend, Blaise Compaoré. Despite the tremendous social and economic reforms made, there was growing dissent in the country among some groups of people and the international community. His administration lost support among the elite due to his progressive policies. During his administration, 7 people associated with the previous government were accused of treason, tried summarily with no right to defense, and executed in 1984. Teachers who went on strike the same year were dismissed. His administration was also accused of suppressing trade unions, and he also forced workers to donate 1 month of their salary for developmental projects. This undermined his government in the eyes of the people. Sankara's anti-imperialist policies and his vocal criticism against foreign aid strained his relationship with Western countries, especially France, the country's former colonial master. By 1987, Sankara was politically isolated. His associates in the military lost confidence in him, and even his closest friend, who was second in command, the more conservative Blaise Compaoré, had turned against him. Although popular and accepted by the poor, Sankara has proven to be a threat to the more ambitious Compaore and other heads of state in Africa, including some Western countries. On 15 October 1987, Blaise Compaoré turned against his friend and brother, and he ordered the soldiers to kill Thomas Sankara. Sankara was in a meeting with his advisors when gunshots erupted in the building. According to Haruna Traoré, the lone survivor of Sankara's assassination, when Sankara heard the gunshot, he told his advisors to stay back, saying that he was the one they wanted. He went out with his hands in the air, signaling no resistance and surrender. Still, the assassins, in complete disregard of that gesture, riddled his body with over 12 bullets and went ahead to kill about 12 of the people in the meeting with him that day. Haruna Traoré survived only because he framed dead. Thomas Sankara's body was quickly dismembered, and he was buried in an unmarked grave, while his wife Mariam and 2 children fled the country. On the evening of the same day, Blaise Compaoré declared himself president, stating that the coup was necessary because Sankara was jeopardizing the country's relationship and undermining his development to make a name for himself. Initially, Blaise Compaoré denied any involvement in the coup, stating that he was asleep during the coup. When Sankara's wife accused the French government of being involved in the assassination of her husband, the Burkina Faso government requested military documents from the French government, which indicted Blaise Compaoré. Prince Johnson, a former warlord and an ally of Charles Taylor, told the Liberian Peace and Reconciliation Committee that Charles Taylor engineered the assassination. The Ivorian president Felix Houphouët-Boigny is believed to have supported the plot against President Thomas Sankara. Felix Houphouët-Boigny, who was more French sympathetic and opposed to the leftists, saw Thomas Sankara as a threat to regional progress and supported Compaore to overthrow his friend. The French and Libyan government are believed to have been involved in the assassination too. After 27 years of his leadership, Blaise Compaoré was forced to resign during a popular uprising by youth in 2014 in Burkina Faso. After his resignation, he fled to Ivory Coast in exile. In 2022, the Ibrahim Traoré government set up a military tribunal which tried Blaise Compaoré in absentia and found him guilty of the assassination of Thomas Sankara and sentenced him to life imprisonment along with other co-conspirators of the coup. Thomas Sankara once said, "While revolutionaries as individuals can be killed, cannot kill ideas. His legacy continues to reverberate across the African continent. Unlike Patrice Lumumba of the DR Congo, these leaders are reminders of the challenges that African leaders and Africa face in trying to achieve genuine independence and development. Thank you for watching this episode. Please subscribe, like and share this video, and until I see you again, bye bye.